Hello and welcome to China Global Television Network. This is The World Today. I'm Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. A concert has been held in celebration of the 105th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China. Xi Jinping and other party and state leaders attended the performance at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing on Monday evening.
Party and state leaders Xi Jinping, Li Qiang, Zhao Leji, Wang Huning, Cai Ji, Ding Xuexiang, Li Xi, and Han Zheng watched the performance. They were greeted by warm applause from the roughly 3,000 audience members at the Great Hall of the People. Titled Putting the People First, the concert opened with a children's chorus. It featured 5 segments, honoring revolutionary martyrs, recalling military-civilian solidarity during the years of the Revolutionary Wars, and depicting development during the years of socialist revolution and construction. Performers also showcased China's transformations since reform and opening up, and highlighted the country's achievements in the new era. The atmosphere reached a climax with performances showcasing the prosperity of the new era. As the performance drew to a close, the audience rose to sing the song, "Without the Communist Party, there would be no new China."
Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the Central Committee of the CPC, will confer the party's highest honor, the July 1st Medal, on model CPC members on Wednesday, the party's 105th founding anniversary. Xi, also China's president and chairman of the Central Military Commission, will deliver an important speech at the event at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. Outstanding members, workers and primary level organizations of the party from across the country will also be honored. The CPC has seen a steady membership growth over its 105-year history. By the end of 2025, the CPC had over 101 million members, a net increase of more than 1 million compared to the end of 2024. It also had over 5.4 million primary level organizations, up by 181,000 from a year earlier. Women membership numbered nearly 32 million, accounting for over 31% of the total. Almost 60 million members had junior college degrees or above, representing 59% of the total. Ethnic minority members made up 7.8%. more than 12 million party members were aged 30 or under. CPC members come from all walks of life, including workers, farmers, professionals and students. Leaders of African political parties say their exchanges with the Communist Party of China have provided valuable lessons on governance and development. Party-to-party cooperation has helped to build mutual respect and strengthen ties between China and Africa.
This being also a people-to-people Chinese year, we've seen a lot of exchanges and we've seen actions actually being taken from the lessons we've learned through the transformation journey where the CPC has really put the people-centered governance before, and this is the same thing that Rwanda, through the leadership of RPF and President Kagame, where in 2015 he said a very powerful word that we chose three choices of the people: staying united, being accountable, and thinking big. And if you really that resonate well as a people-centered governance of CPC, we've seen the transformation journey.
Such interactions remind us of where we're coming from. Very critical. We need to keep the same spirit. And it should trickle down to the people. We should continue appreciating this relationship because it's strategic, it's important, it's a lot of exchange, knowledge, culture, and also opportunities.
I have been able to trace the landmarks that the CPC has gone through over the past years to be able to achieve what they have now. Similarly, in our country, my country, Seychelles, it has been the same. Our party has gone through some march, some fight for us to be able to achieve what we have now, so that our people is beneficiaring with the promises that we have. The aim was for equality and to provide opportunity for everyone. So this was a fight beneficiaring for the people. So it's quite the same, similar when analyzing and when observing the fight that the CPC had.
Washington and Tehran have traded accusations over multiple breaches of the ceasefire, which was signed 12 days ago. The dispute over the Strait of Hormuz is expected to remain at the center of any diplomatic contact. Kate Fisher reports from Washington, D.C.
Caroline Levitt, the press secretary for the president, confirming that Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, his chief envoy, are traveling to Doha for talks.
Iran has requested a meeting this week, so Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be flying to Doha for high-level meetings this week as we continue to discuss the memorandum of understanding. On the sidelines of those high-level talks will be the technical talk.
So the White House saying these talks are happening. Of course, it comes after these tit-for-tat strikes across 4 days, which have put this memorandum of understanding, this interim peace deal, in jeopardy. The main issue, the Strait of Hormuz, that vital waterway that ships so much of the world's oil. There seems to be a different interpretation by the US and Iran as to who is in control of that waterway. So assuming these talks do go ahead, I imagine that will be top of the agenda, even though this 60-day time period to try to thresh out a long-term peace deal was supposed to look at things like the nuclear program, which of course is one of the main objectives for the United States when they began this conflict. That may be pushed further down the agenda, given the fact that there is still this conflict over who is in control of the Strait of Hormuz. Shipping traffic significantly dropped over the weekend, although we understand it has started to pick up in the last 24 hours or so, as the US has said that these talks are going to continue and that both sides are standing down. That in contrast to what Donald Trump was saying on social media on Sunday, where he again threatened Iran with essentially annihilation, saying that they would have to go in, the US would have to go in and complete the job if the Iranians didn't keep to their side of this deal, this memorandum of understanding. So once again, we are getting different rhetoric from both sides in this conflict, which has been, kind of a symbol of these talks ever since they began.
Iran's foreign ministry has said only Iran and Oman have authority over the Strait of Hormuz's management. The two sides will start talks soon on redefining routes through the strait. Tehran also rejects foreign interference in demining the waterway.
We are firmly determined to reach an understanding with Oman on the arrangements for administering the Strait of Hormuz. If, for any reason, Oman is not interested in doing so, the Islamic Republic of Iran will proceed on its own. We will not allow any country to interfere in the mine clearance process in the Strait of Hormuz, not France, nor, at this temporary stage, anyone else. The Islamic Republic of Iran will determine the transit routes under these temporary conditions, and we cannot accept any other route. It is also our responsibility to provide conditions for safe passage. That is why, if vessels use other routes, we will oppose it and seek to prevent it. If anything happens to those vessels, they will bear responsibility themselves.
Authorities in Venezuela say the death toll from the twin earthquakes that struck the country nearly a week ago has risen to over 1,700, with more than 5,000 people injured. 10,000 volunteers have been mobilized to continue rescue and recovery operations. The Chinese community in Venezuela has donated nearly 1,700 tons of relief supplies. Stephen Gibbs has more from Caracas.
Well, as we come up to 5 days since this catastrophic double earthquake, we are still seeing people rescued. Just unbelievable, amazing stories coming out from the worst hit area of people who have survived for so long and owe their lives to these rescuers, both local and international. There was one man, 106 hours under the rubble. He seemed okay. He is being taken to hospital care. And there are many, many, many other stories. The rescue operation is definitely continuing. There is a bit of hope because those who can find space or water, even though they are trapped under rubble, those are the ones that can survive perhaps for a week or more. But at the same time, the focus is moving towards what to do next. You have thousands of people displaced. The Venezuelan government says it is expecting many of these will have to live in camps, like almost refugee camps. There is the whole healthcare problem, an area without proper running water, with intermittent electricity. That risk, therefore, the risk increases of infectious disease. So what we've been seeing is field hospitals being set up, many countries sending these. India has already set up one. The United States is talking about setting up 4. That will alleviate a bit of the pressure on the domestic health service, which is under very, very serious pressure, with 10 times the normal demand for medical care. We've also seen a big effort for donations. China is actually sending some aid. The Chinese community here, a big community historically, it has assembled hundreds of tons of aid, which is sending down to that worst hit area. We've seen that all over Venezuela, really. People watching these awful, terrible images and feeling themselves, even if they're not directly affected, hopeless, but wanting to help, and they are doing that as best they can. Stephen Gibbs, CGTN, Caracas.
And that is it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching. The DR Congo bans public gatherings in 4 more provinces in a bid to contain the Ebola outbreak. South Africa deploys police as anti-migrant protests spark fear. And disputes over constitutional reform in Senegal deepen political divisions. I'm Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. Welcome to Africa Live. Also ahead on the program, Kenya receives a $750 million loan from the World Bank to ease servicing pressures. And joy for Morocco as they advance to the last 16 after a dramatic penalty shootout win over the Netherlands. Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Seychelles President Patrick Khamenei have exchanged congratulations on the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. In his message on Tuesday, President Xi praised the enduring friendship between China and the Seychelles, saying the two nations have consistently trusted and supported each other despite changes in the international landscape. He expressed his readiness to work with President Khamenei to build on the 5 decades of ties by expanding high-quality Belt and Road cooperation, strengthening collaboration under the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, and advancing their strategic partnership. For his part, Khamenei reaffirmed the Seychelles' commitment to the One China principle. He described China as a trusted and valuable development partner that has helped Seychelles achieve its national development goals. Khamenei pledged to further deepen cooperation as both countries look to grow their bilateral ties. The Seychelles has marked the 50th anniversary of its independence with celebrations at the Unity Stadium in the capital, Victoria. The island nation became a sovereign republic in 1976 after over 100 years of British colonial rule. After 20 platoons, including military forces, police, the Fire and Rescue Agency, and several youth organizations participated in a parade. 4 other countries, China, India, Russia, and Mauritius, also participated in the parade. The Golden Jubilee celebrations included music, dance, and cultural performances, and a drone show that drew cheers from the crowd. In his address, President Patrick Khamenei honored the nation's past.
We are deeply grateful that you have joined us to celebrate this important milestone in our nation's history. 50 years ago, Seychelles took its rightful place among the community of nations as a sovereign and independent republic. Since then, we have remained steadfast in our commitment to friendship, mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and constructive international cooperation.
I think today is a very special day for all Seychellois. It's marking our 50th anniversary of independence, so we are all feeling very proud, and it's really a great for all.
For Seychelles, the 50th anniversary, I expect we all will just stay the same, just keep on thriving, being us Seychellois, not being afraid to show our identity, because that matters more.
As the Communist Party of China marks its 105th anniversary, here in Africa, one question continues to draw global attention. What has enabled the world's largest governing party to sustain its vitality for more than a century? We spoke to Clifford Oparadu, Secretary General of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission of Nigeria, who shared his views on the CPC's strong leadership, as well as what other developing countries can learn from China's experience.
I think what has really happened, the success story from what I gathered and from what I've read and what I have seen of CPC is leadership, strong leadership. And you know, in every society where you come from, if you have a strong leadership, the people will prosper. In some political climate, people look at political parties as just an avenue to be in power. But they forgot that when you're in power, and if you don't have the trust and confidence of the people, then you cannot succeed. That's why over time, most political parties, you know, they come up after 4 or 5 years, they are disintegrated. But if there is consistency, I have seen in CPC, it then means that their policies and leadership is strong. And the thing is showing, is manifesting. And I want to take that back home.
Meanwhile, a senior official from the ruling party in Zambia says the Communist Party of China has stood the test of time because of its people-centered approach. On the occasion of the CPC's anniversary milestone, Gertrude Emenda, Deputy Secretary General of the United Party for National Development in Zambia, said her party has a lot to learn from the CPC on how to prioritize people's well-being and improve governance.
You are in government to look after the people. So the approach which we should borrow from the Communist Party of China, the CPC, is that we should be people-centered. People should come first. CPC has had a leadership that was developmentally oriented, and we are not surprised that China has achieved this developmental miracle. It is because it has carried on with the people. People can trust the leadership. And now what is happening to the world? The whole world now is looking at China. But how did they do it? It's because they have good leadership. And that leadership has steered development, and it has become a miracle, so to say, a developmental miracle.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo has banned public gatherings in 4 more provinces as the country battles a deadly Ebola outbreak. The Interior Ministry issued directives last Saturday mentioning Kinshasa, Tshopo, Hotulele and Basuele. No cases have been confirmed in these 4 provinces, but authorities say the restrictions are aimed at preventing the virus from spreading from eastern hotspots. The Ministry of Health has so far confirmed 1,307 cases, including 377 deaths. The cases were recorded in the eastern provinces of Ituri, North Kivu and South Kivu. The ban has drawn criticism from opposition groups who accuse the government of using the outbreak to restrict planned anti-government protests. The authorities insist the measures are solely to protect public health. The directive came a day after crowds gathered to celebrate the Congo's qualification for the World Cup knockout rounds. Today marks the unofficial deadline issued by South Africa's anti-migrant groups for all undocumented foreign nationals to leave the country. Widespread fears have forced many workers to stay home, shops to close and buses to remain idle. African foreigners have avoided work or fled ahead of the deadline. In major cities like Johannesburg and Durban, landlords evicted foreign tenants to mitigate potential vandalism, despite many being legal residents. Police and military were deployed on the streets to try to keep order during the planned marches. Despite acknowledging concerns about irregular immigration, President Ramaphosa condemned violence against immigrants. Recently, mobs have attacked migrants, resulting in deaths and injuries. This has led to a push by several African countries to repatriate their foreign nationals, with thousands fleeing or seeking assistance on the ground. While anti-migrant protesters allege undocumented migrants are taking away jobs that South Africans could be doing. But experts say the country's economy only created about 130,000 new formal sector jobs annually between 2013 and 2023. Protesters also claim that migrants are using public services like education and healthcare at the expense of citizens. We spoke to Professor Alex van der Heever, a social security expert at the University of Witwatersrand, who expounded on these issues.
As is well known in emerging economies, is that the movement of population and the concentration of population has very positive effects on economic growth. And economies in their nature are emergent in nature. In other words, it comes from the ground up. People find ways of stimulating economic development and growth and entrepreneurship. And Johannesburg has a lot of that, and with a lot of immigrants, whether documented or undocumented, are actually part of quite thriving informal economies and quasi-formal economies, which have emerged and are quite strong, and in fact are quite important to export markets for South Africa, because a lot of the region purchases their goods in bulk in South Africa and retails them in the region. So all of that is kind of being attacked. So the idea that jobs are lost because of population movement is nonsense. Internal migration in South Africa is far greater from rural to urban areas and from certain provinces to other provinces is far greater than cross-border migration. Government has been regulating many of the industries in South Africa in such a way that it has become harder and harder to direct investment, formal investment into the economy. So we've seen South Africa's gross domestic fixed investment decline to sort of relatively low levels, levels consistent with the end of apartheid. When in fact we were under sanctions, both capital account and current account sanctions. And now we're sitting in that same environment, largely due to poor structural policies in South Africa and policies that basically drive investment away. So there's enormous investment potential in South Africa. A lot of big corporates in the formal sector are cash rich, they can invest. But the question is, are they going to take a risk in South Africa when the regulatory environment resembles a shakedown?
So just how many documented and undocumented migrants are in South Africa? CGTN's Robert Nagila crunches the numbers.
Protest groups say there are millions of undocumented migrants in South Africa. However, there are no official figures for the number of undocumented migrants in the country, as their status makes them difficult to track. According to the Department of Statistics, South Africa's population stood at 63.1 million in 2025. Of that number, approximately 3 million people were immigrants, accounting for 5.1% of the population. Nearly two-thirds, or 63.6%, originated from countries within the Southern African Development Community, or SADC. In recent years, the government has stepped up enforcement measures against undocumented migrants. The Department of Home Affairs says it deported more than 109,000 people between the 2024 and 2026 financial years, representing a cumulative increase of 46%. Annual deportations rose from over 39,000 in 2023-2024 to over 51,000 in 2024-2025, before increasing again to over 57,000 in 2025-2026. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees says that as of 2025, South Africa was hosting about 167,000 refugees and asylum seekers, mainly from Burundi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, South Sudan, Rwanda and Zimbabwe. Many analysts will be closely watching developments in South Africa as threats loom large for undocumented migrants in the country amid frantic efforts by several African governments to evacuate their nationals. Robert Nagela, CGTN.
South Africa is being criticized across the continent, with many saying the recent spate of attacks does not help any country, including South Africa. Some are calling for more compassionate and rational ways to deal with undocumented migrants and other underlying issues.
You know, the xenophobic attacks in South Africa makes South Africa unstable. It makes it look unstable, and also it makes it socially fractured and affects the direct foreign investment in South Africa. It also erodes foreign direct investment. You know that the FDI is sensitive to perceptions of safety. Nobody wants to invest or establish a business in a hostile or investment unfriendly country, you know.
The continental free trade area needs trust and goodwill. But xenophobia corrodes precisely that, the social and diplomatic capital that makes economic integration viable. So countries whose nationals are being attacked are not inclined to extend preferential market access or collaborative trade framework.
The whole issue of xenophobia, with apparently hundreds of people who've been rounded up and waiting for their deportation to their country, to be flown out to their countries. It's such extreme, drastic action, and it doesn't really solve the problem. It creates more problems for them.
Xenophobia is bad for the world, especially for South Africa, because they're doing it with no support or anything. They're just going crazy. And another thing is, I have no idea why they're doing it.
I traveled to South Africa last week, and the immigration officials at the border are being very hostile. Their service was very slow, and we waited for hours. Yet we rely on products from South Africa to sell here. So we are being affected. Even our suppliers in South Africa are unsure about what will happen on the 30th of June. They say they won't be open on that day.
We send money to our friends and family to buy goods for us there and put them on the bus. But right now they're too scared to go and shop. We no longer have any platform to send money for our orders. And even now, because people are returning home, the border is so busy. It's taking much longer for the orders we have already placed to get to us, which is very disruptive.
Now let's turn to Nigeria and its ongoing insecurity problems. In the northeastern Borno state, gunmen have abducted an unknown number of students after storming a secondary school. Police say the attackers fired shots as they raided government day secondary schools in Lassa before fleeing with several students. Security forces, including the military and police, have launched a search in nearby forests. The number of missing has not yet been established. Nigeria is grappling with a jihadist insurgency in the northeast, where Boko Haram and the Islamic State West Africa province have waged a conflict for more than 15 years. The armed gangs often target school and communities, hoping to get ransoms from kidnappings. We now turn to Senegal, where a dispute over constitutional reform has deepened political divisions and sparked more protests. It comes weeks after political turmoil, which saw the sacked Prime Minister subsequently be elected to the role of Parliament Speaker. Critics say a bill passed by Parliament on Monday will upset the delicate balance of power in the country and give more power to the Speaker at the expense of the country's President. A political coalition supporting President Bassirou Diomaye Faye has called for an immediate withdrawal of the bill. CGTN Sophia Shimechero has more.
Dozens of protesters gathered outside the National Assembly on Monday, chanting slogans denouncing the proposed amendments to the Constitution. They are unhappy with what they see as a power grab by Ousmane Sonko, who was sacked by President Bassirou Diomaye Faye as Prime Minister last month, only to be re-elected by the ruling Pastef party to the influential position of Parliament Speaker. Some of the proposed changes include a provision prohibiting a sitting president from serving as leader of a political party and stricter controls on the president's power to dissolve the parliament. They were passed by an overwhelming parliamentary majority. Protesters say any constitutional amendments must go directly through the people.
We are here unbalancing our institutions, giving enormous powers to the President of the National Assembly and weakening the President of the Republic voted by the people. So we are here to say no to this injustice, to say no to this masquerade.
No one has ever touched our constitution without asking the Senegalese people whether they agree or not. To do that requires a referendum. But they get up overnight to tell Senegalese people, here, we are going to change the laws in the name of what?
The debate comes as political tensions persist between Faye and Sonko, once staunch allies, but who fell out in recent months over how to deal with the country's debt crisis. This split plunged the country's ruling alliance into a dramatic power struggle. Opponents say they will continue to challenge the legislation. Meanwhile, Faye announced the proposed reforms would be put to a national referendum, giving Senegalese people a say on the country's political future. Sophia Shimechero, CGTN.
Ghanaian lawyers and a coalition of human rights groups in the U.S. have filed a case against Ghana in West Africa's highest human rights court over its role in the controversial U.S. third country deportation program. The case argues that Ghana violated regional and international law by accepting deportees from the U.S. before sending them back to countries where they allegedly faced persecution, torture or other serious risks. The lawsuit filed at the ECOWAS Court of Justice alleges some deportees were left stranded elsewhere in West Africa without legal status, money or support. The claimants also describe abuse during deportation flights and harsh detention conditions in Ghana. The case was filed on behalf of 27 deportees who are no longer in Ghana and states that at least 60 people have been deported to Ghana since last September. It comes as the Donald Trump administration expands its use of African countries to advance its mass deportation strategy. You're watching Africa Live. Here's what's coming up in your business news. Kenya receives $750 million loan from the World Bank to ease debt servicing pressures. And South Africa's agricultural sector posts a trade surplus of $1.55 billion, the highest in trade history.
Marking a milestone that changed China and the world. 105 years since the founding of the Communist Party of China. How it began as a revolutionary movement and evolved into a ruling party that's transformed China into a thriving economic powerhouse. Adjusting course over the decades, meeting challenges, lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, winning their trust and support, driving innovation at scale and working hard to lay the groundwork for the industries of the future, and guiding a modern, prosperous nation at a time of rapid global change. Commemorating 105 years. Special coverage only on CGTN.
The World Bank has approved a $750 million budget support loan for Kenya and a sustainability-linked facility that will reduce the country's reliance on expensive domestic debt and bolster economic reforms. The budget support will come in the form of a $340 million International Bank for Reconstruction and Development loan and $410 million in highly concessional International Development Association funding. This will be the 7th DPO Kenya has received since its first in 2018. Kenya's public finances are under pressure from heavy debt and wide fiscal deficits. The World Bank said the sustainability loan was designed to help diversify Kenya's funding mix, deliver on targets to reduce rates of deforestation and increase rural electricity access. Morocco has secured $650 million in new World Bank financing. The funds will support the country's digital transformation and strengthen resilience against climate, disaster and cyber risks. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi reports.
The World Bank package includes one program supporting artificial intelligence initiatives, digital public services, cloud systems, startups and business digitalization.
Morocco is holding national consultations that will bring together all stakeholders involved in artificial intelligence and more broadly the digital sector to develop a roadmap that will help position our country as a regional hub for artificial intelligence and data science.
For Moroccan startups, the funding could help expand AI innovation and research. Addressed is one example, using AI-powered simulations to train employees on complex enterprise software.
We basically make the train much more engaging, much more scalable and much more accessible by using simulation instead of the real software itself. The user gets a step-by-step click-through simulation that mimics the real company's processes, and they can learn by themselves without needing any software license on any installation of the software itself.
But Morocco's digital ambitions are also linked to wider economic and climate pressures. The country has faced repeated climate shocks, especially prolonged drought, putting pressure on water resources and agriculture. Experts say climate risk financing will help Morocco move faster on adaptation projects and better protect vulnerable communities and businesses.
This funding offers an opportunity to implement climate adaptation projects while addressing the country's most pressing needs, especially securing water resources.
Together, the two programs reflect Morocco's effort to link digital innovation with climate resilience. The challenge now will be turning that financing into lasting benefits for citizens, businesses, and the broader economy. Aden Shawishi, CGTN.
China has waived loans to Sudan worth 344 million yuan, or about $50 million, in a deal announced over the weekend. The agreement, signed in Port Sudan, cancels 4 interest-free loans at a time when Khartoum has few international lenders willing to provide support. Sudan's total external debt owed to governments and international agencies was estimated at more than $56 billion before fighting began in 2023 between the army and the rapid support forces. Sudan's Finance Minister Jibril Ibrahim welcomed the move, saying China has continued investing in the country throughout the conflict, while Western governments, including the US and the European Union, have largely held back. Sudan's economy has shrunk by about 40% since the conflict erupted. The country continues to grapple with soaring costs, economic collapse, and an uncertain path to recovery. At the signing ceremony, China's envoy to Sudan said China pledges to help rebuild the country.
I congratulate the people of Sudan on the signing of the agreement to cancel approximately $50 million of Sudan's debt to China. This generous gesture reflects the strong and enduring partnership between our two countries. China is a strategic partner that stood by Sudan during some of our most difficult times. Today, it is one of our largest investors and our biggest trading partner. China played a key role in developing Sudan's oil sector. It is the one that extracted the oil, and we see great potential to expand that partnership. We also welcome China's expertise in infrastructure, be it railways, electricity grids, water networks, or sanitation systems, as we rebuild our country. And we invite Chinese companies to be part of Sudan's reconstruction and future growth.
Recently, the Chinese government decided to waive 4 interest-free loans. Today, the Sudanese Minister of Finance, Jibril Ibrahim, and I signed a debt relief agreement on behalf of our governments. The Sudanese government is currently making great efforts in national reconstruction. China hopes to effectively reduce its debt burden through this waiver and help the Sudanese government expand its fiscal space. This once again reflects China's commitment to Sudan's reconstruction. China and Sudan are good brothers, good friends, and good partners. China has consistently firmly supported Sudan's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity, and will continue to provide assistance for Sudan's economic and social development.
And now to South Africa, where the country's agricultural sector recorded a trade surplus of $1.55 billion in the first quarter of the year. It is the highest first quarter surplus in South Africa's agricultural trade history. Experts say the nature of the growth was significant, as it was largely achieved through lower import costs rather than export expansion. CGTN's Travis Andrews reports.
The annual trade report of 2025 shows that export earnings have expanded by 53% over the last 5 years, led by exports in grapes, pears, nuts and wine.
The encouraging aspect of the mentioned figures is not an isolated result. If we look at the 2025 figures, the agricultural trade surplus recorded was $7.3 billion. And if we look at the first quarter of 2026, South African agriculture reached a trade surplus of approximately $1.5 billion, which is in fact the highest first quarter surplus on record for South African agriculture in history. And there are several factors behind this performance. Firstly, South Africa benefits greatly from a highly diversified export basket, ranging from citrus fruits to wines, grapes, nuts, grains, sugar, red meat, and also a variety of processed agricultural products. And so this diversity helps the sector manage risk and also remain competitive across a wide range of export markets.
The expansion of horticultural land is a major driver in the growth of South Africa's agricultural exports, contributing close to $10 billion to the economy. Long-term success, however, will depend on the country's ability to diversify export destinations, maintain trusted trade relationships, and create an enabling environment for producers to remain globally competitive.
I think it's quite a remarkable performance, but if we assess the composition of these of this surplus, it's very important to notice the following, that South Africa's record trade surplus was driven primarily by the maturation of a decade-long citrus investment boom, broader horticultural growth, and expanding African markets. But the sector's future now hinges on managing concentration risk, foot and mouth, logistic failures.
For now, stakeholders in the agricultural export sector will continue to work towards overcoming structural risks that contain future growth, including biosecurity threats, port inefficiencies, and phytosanitary restrictions in key export markets. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
China and the European Union have officially established a bilateral trade and investment consultation mechanism. China's Minister of Commerce, Wang Wentao, and the European Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, Maros Sefcovic, co-chaired the first meeting in Brussels. William Denslow reports.
In this brief statement, they say the main objective is for the two sides to strengthen dialogue. The statement goes on to say there is a view to stabilise and make this bilateral relationship more balanced. Now, we have had some insight from Maros Sefcovic speaking to the press in a quick breakaway from these talks to give some more details as to what's included in this trade and investment consultations, or this TIC. Now, essentially, it's broken into 4 parts that will frame ongoing conversations for the next few months: trade balancing, export controls, intellectual property rights, and WTO reform. Now, Maros Sefcovic has given some insight into the nature of the talks so far here in Brussels. He says they've been intense, they've been focused and constructive. Ultimately, he says that the status quo is not an option, but he certainly hopes by ramping up a dialogue, he hopes that real progress can be made. He says that he'll be seeking some of that progress to be evident by the autumn. He says he'll be making a trip to Beijing in the coming months. He says by October, he certainly hopes to see that there will be an improvement in this current situation.
And coming up in your sports news, joy for Morocco as the Atlas Lions advance to the last 16 after a dramatic penalty shootout win over the Netherlands. Africa has its first side in the last 16 of the World Cup after Morocco stunned the Netherlands with a late equaliser in Monterrey on Monday before eliminating them on penalties. The Dutch took the lead midway through the second half with a goal from Cody Gakpo, playing just days after his partner confirmed the death of the couple's unborn son. It looked like that might be enough, but the Atlas Lions did not give up, and they were rewarded deep into stoppage time with an equaliser from Issa Diop. The tie would ultimately go to penalties, where Morocco's Yassine Bounou saved before Ismaili Saibari scored what was the winning kick. Next up for Morocco is Canada at the weekend in Houston.
Morocco has gained everybody's respect, not because we say we are strong, but because of what we've done.